What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? You are listening to the Data is My Science podcast, the show that makes data your passion. This is your host, Dapper Data, once again. As you know, I love to bring on special guests to talk about some expertise that they have related to data. And today, I brought on somebody that can talk a little bit about something different, right? Something unique that we haven't talked about before, right? We talk about programming languages, we dive into machine learning, supervised, unsupervised learning, all that cool stuff, right? We I think we delve into data ops and DevOps a little bit, but right now we're going to talk about how there are challenges faced by a data team, right? When you're trying to create that data team, you're trying to lead a data team, right? And some of the challenges you go through that with that. We're also going to talk about the recipe, and you'll see why I like to say recipe. Okay, we're going to emphasize that word when having the recipe to a strong data ops design. That's very important. Okay. And so I brought on a special guest. Name is Chris Bergh. Chris Bergh is the CEO and head chef of DataKitchen. More than 30 years in the field of research, software engineering, data analytics, executive management experience, you name it, right? COO, CTO, VP. Chris is recognized as an expert in data ops. And we're going to dive into that. Okay. He's been the author of Data Ops Manifesto, the Data Ops Cookbook, you name it. And you see the recipe, the cookbook, right? So we're going to get cooking on some conversations here. So, Chris, let's get this conversation cooking. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. So, what's the sort of short summary? How about old data nerd? Maybe that's the best way to think of it. I'm kind of a working class kid from Wisconsin. I taught in the Peace Corps for a few years, and then I got the software bug, like a lot of people. And actually, in graduate school, I studied AI back when it was like in the deep winter of AI. So, like my machine learning class had 6 people in.
Oh my goodness. I was like 30 or something, right? 30
No,
plus,
it's six. It was everyone hated it. 1988, everyone hated AI. It was way down in the dumps, right? Because it
Oh
had gone
man.
through its first boom, and then everyone said this is all crap. And
Hmm.
so I took a job at NASA, kind of doing some AI stuff related to air traffic control, and then I got into commercial software, some internet startups. And then started to manage software teams. And I wrote a lot of code, managed a lot of software teams. And then about 2005, my kids were young, and I thought, I need a break from the software stuff. I want to do something easy. So I joined a company as a COO that did data and analytics. And it was like healthcare data. We had a bunch of customers, thousands of users. It was a small company. We grew it quite rapidly, but I learned what it was like run to be a data scientist, a data engineer. I did some of the work, but my teams did the work. I had data engineers and scientists and people who did visualization for us. We had hundreds and hundreds of data feeds. We had thousands of users, and like my life sucked. It was just bad.
Hmm.
And not for the way you think, not because like the actual developing of the nuggets of data transformation or the models, like that's all cool and I love that stuff, right? But it was running the whole team and the system was actually really hard. So running the factory was a mess. Like data would come in wrong or
Processes, right?
late
Processes.
and broken. And like I was running when I came in, I was running a factory that produced AMC Pacers in the 1970s. Right? They were crappy. They
Oh,
were rusted. They weren't nice Toyotas. Right? They were crappy cars. Um, and because of that, my life really sucked. Right? And then also the factory, one of the things I learned pretty quickly is that people, no matter what, when they get insight, they always have follow-up questions, right? You
hmm.
give them a single chart, you give them a model, you give them a data set, they're going to say, well, what about this? What about that? And
Hmm.
that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing to have a dialogue and iterate through questions for people. But then how do you run a really good factory? But then how do you change the factory really quickly? And those things are
Right.
like incredibly opposite, right? Like you want to, and so I've been kind of dealing with that question of how do you deliver insight with a team of people? How do you rapidly satisfy your customers and deliver values? And then finally, how do you have, when you have a team of smart people, and some people like R, some people like Python, some people like Tableau, some people like Click, how do you like let them innovate and use their favorite tools? And so all
Right.
those things we sold that company in kind of 2013, and then about 2014, my co-founders and I founded DataKitchen, and so we've been at this journey, kind of the same problem that we had starting in 2005 when, and I think honestly, it hasn't gotten better. And if you look at it from the personal to the market and the statistics, like, data and analytics is no longer in its heroic age. It's about teams of people doing things, right? And teams have gotten big, not 5 people or 500 people, right? And all over the organization. And so the complexity of what they're doing is up, and the complexity of data is up. The amount of tools that are available is up. It's really gotten a lot of press. You can't watch a football game and not see data and analytics and Amazon's ad for our cool and data. Yeah. And, I just want to, how much of a change that is. Like when I started working in this career, I'd say, oh yeah, I'm going to run a data team. We're doing some, I call it predictive modeling. We had some ETL engineers. No one knew what I was talking about. I had to explain my job. I do charts and graphs. And they're like, oh, okay, I get what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the whole, so I mean, it's a remarkable change, right, in the last 15 years. And like people are into data and Moneyball, all that. But the fact of the matter is data teams are failing. They fail. Gartner says 60% of data and analytic projects fail. As you know, sort of the majority of data science models never get in the hands of their customers. People don't trust the data. The amount of companies reporting as being data driven is declining in the last, there's a New Vantage Partners report that they do every year. And so it's kind of a dirty secret with all this hype that things aren't working. And also a lot of people have entered the field and are frustrated. So we did a survey with another company just recently, and 80% of data engineers want a therapist. 70% of them said they're so frustrated with their job, they're thinking of leaving. And,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And you know what? I wasn't surprised because it kind of sucks, right? All right. And why does it suck? You have data, people who are giving you data to analyze, right? They don't care that you exist. They'll forget to give it to you. They'll change columns. You have customers who are ravenous for new insight, and they have lots of follow-up questions. They want to get it wide. And that challenge of how do you not kill yourself being a hero, and then how do you versus how do you lock everything down so you don't have any fear? That's a real tension, right? And so that leads to frustration with people because they can. And it came like on my 42nd birthday back in 2006 or 7. I had an engineer. He turned 24 that same day. We had the same birthday. I was 42. He was 24. And I'd just gotten into the company. He's a really smart guy. Went to an Ivy League college. And he came in my office and cried because he felt he couldn't be successful. He's like, I can't go fast enough. Things are always breaking. I'm working nights and weekends. My life sucks. And I was like, And so I started to read, like, I'm his boss, right? And I was like, and the first few weeks I thought, these people are stupid, I should fire them. But then I started to realize, no, it's my job to make an environment that these people can be successful. I started to think about, what if it's a factory? Well, what makes good factories or not? Like back in college, I read this book about, Japanese cars versus American cars, the machine that changed the world. I started to read that again, read Deming, who's about industrial process control. And there's a way that factories, why did Toyota win over American Motors? Right? It's not because the Japanese are smarter or have work faster. It's that they focused on the process and the systems to deliver value. They didn't buy a whole bunch of cool robots. It's that they said, we're a team. We have to work together, and and so there's a set of methods that came from industrial management that sort of ended up in software, in Agile and the DevOps movement that I think apply pretty clearly to the world of data and analytics. And from my perspective, those things really are rooted in my management challenge of how do I be a good boss to a smart engineer who's crying? How do I not get yelled at by my customer when it's late? How do I not have my wife get upset with me because I'm complaining about work yet again. So
Right.
those sort of things are like all rooted in and why we started to sort of push this idea of data ops and applying these ideas that we sort of stole from other areas into data science, data engineering, the whole data and analytics field.
No, that's amazing, Chris. And what I take from that is processes are key, right? Having the right process is efficient. It's structured. It's focused on making the entire team better. That seems like that's the most important thing that you want to focus on throughout, trying to build this solid team, right? And so when the with your history and your stories, would you say that in order to come up with this great vision in the future, right? In order to come up with this great end goal, right? That you've been able to come up with, you almost have to experience all the failures and you have to dive into multiple things to kind of figure out that problem. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, and that's sort of what we're trying to do. We're trying to like package up that package up the things that alleviate our pain in a software product in a company and sell it in the marketplace, right? So people don't have to do all the dumb stuff we did.
Right,
uh,
right.
right, and we can make some money on it. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. And like,
Yeah.
and to me, it's like I came at this not both from a technical guy who I've written a lot of code, and well, last time I wrote code was about 4 years ago, but like um, the
You still got it. You still got it, Chris. With us.
I still got it. I still got it.
Like
Yeah,
riding a bike.
but the I think what happens is when you're managing a team of people, and there's a set of methods to manage a team of people that I wouldn't know how to manage a theater troupe or a branch of government. I have like no idea. But I like if there's a group of people and they're working on a shared technically complicated thing, like
Hmm.
there's a set of principles on how you manage that. Like, and
Right.
that shared technically complicated thing could be a factory that makes cars. It could be a software team that has a back end and a front end and works together to make a website. Or it could
Hmm.
be a data and analytics team that has pipelines and models and visualizations. Like the principles are the same on how you manage it. And the first principle in all those is that deliver get everyone focused on delivering value to the end customer. Like that's the
Hmm.
most important thing. Don't
Yeah.
worry about your project or your timeline. Is the
Yeah.
customer happy? Is it working? The definition of being done means it's in the customer's hands and they're using it and they like it. Like that is
Right.
like one.
When you come up with a sorry to cut you off. I was gonna say
Oh
when you
no.
come up with a success rate, right? It's at the end of the day is the customer satisfied, right?
Yeah.
You have all the Amazon, that's like one of their top 10 models or something like that, right? They're focused on the customer at the end of the day, and it's in the customer is the customer satisfied? So that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And believe me, it's hard to do, right? It's much easier to kind of like sit with your computer in your room and build your crystal castle and like lots of code and like, oh, 6 months later, no one's seen the light of day.
Mm,
And like the problem is that the more time you spend doing that, the more often you're going to miss what really matters.
mm,
And you need to get things into your customer's hands. And maybe your customer is a VP or a director in your company, or maybe it's someone who's using your website, but you need to get it in their hands and then see if it changes them, right? Because we're in the influence business. The data business is an influence business, right? We've got these weird set of skills that we can understand data and analyze data. Not everyone has them or everyone wants to, but they look on us as a data team to help them navigate this complicated world. And in some cases, they think it's magic, but like our influence on those people is really important. And so how
right.
we've got to, and the only way if you think they don't really care about the how you do it, they just want to touch it and feel it. And they're going to give you really good feedback on what they want and what they don't want. And so
Right.
the second principle is that cycle time matters. And cycle
Mhm.
time means how fast you can put something in your customer's hand and change it and then learn from it. And
Oh,
the two things that matters is one, is that you end up maximizing the amount of work you don't have to do, because you talk to a customer, you go off for 6 months, you think they wanted 10 things. You
Mhm.
get your project plan, I got 10 things. 6 months later, they go, those 2 things I really wanted. The other 8, not so much. But by the way, here's
Right.
4 more I really wanted. And so if you would have just gone through and done it in shorter cycles, you would have ended up doing only 6 things, and you would have
Hmm.
saved a whole bunch of time. And so that is like short cycles. Really, you are much more attuned to what the customer wants, and it ends up
Yeah.
saving you time.
So are you saying when you say cycle time, right? Actually going to the customer, right? Saying, hey, I have this piece. So you have an entire product you're trying to develop, right? Or entire solution you're trying to develop, or whatever it is, a process, and you have those stakeholders involved, right? And instead of just saying, hey, here's the final product, right? I've been spending all this time in the shop, making sure the product is great for you. I met with you one time. I got all the requirements down. It was great. Instead of doing that, right, you're actually meeting more frequently, right, with that customer. Every time that you develop maybe a piece of, you say, hey, look, is this what you're looking for, right? They give you
Yeah.
feedback. You make adjustments. So before you even go on to the next solution or next part of that next phase, then you're sort of making changes throughout that time, right?
Yeah. And it's a really interesting thought that sort of doing less is more, doing worse is better, because we all want to show off our skills, right? And so let's say you're talking to a head of marketing, right? And marketings have customers and they want to segment their customers. Now you go to your book and you pull it down and you're like, oh, I'm going to use k-means clustering. I'm going to use this, and we're going to have this data set. And like, maybe the first thing that you should do is just take them and rank sort them and decile them.
Right,
Really
right,
simple to do, right? Just give them a decile and say, is
yeah,
this good enough? And he's like, oh, this is perfect. You decile by sales volume? Oh, fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted. Or they can say, you know what? That's not quite right. We should do it this way.
right.
And so you're always trying to find the way to work through that, because the challenge, like in software, you're building a software product, you give them the UI, they look at it. So you've got that
Mhm.
one iteration cycle. But in data, you've got this secondary one. It's like they're asking you a business question. I want to segment my customers for this reason because I want to drive sales of a particular product. And you're like, have to look at the data and say, can this actually make that prediction? Like they want
Mhm.
to, I don't have any product sales for this. I've got total sales. I don't have product sales. So like, does it matter? I
Right,
can't
right.
make that prediction. And so, that's what makes it really interesting is like you're also iterating with the data, having fast cycle times with the data to do it. And I think those things, so that idea of cycle time, focusing
Mhm.
on customer value. I also think the idea of trust and
Mm.
is really important, because safety of people, because in a big shared technically complicated thing, if you
Mhm.
start BSing someone that this part works, they're going to know.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And like maybe you can do that in like a play, and like you can like act your part and the play will still go on. But like if that part of the factory is broken, or that piece of software, or that, the SQL code that you're using for data transformation isn't doing what it says, everyone's going to know. And so
Yeah,
communication and trust and the ability to say, this looks weird, can we check it out? Or I want to improve it. The team has got to have a more level of high communication and trust. So
yeah,
value, cycle time, sort of trust. And then the last is like, get analytic about your processes that you work, because your team
mhm,
itself, how much work they do, how well the factory's running, how many errors it has. That is a really interesting source of data. And
mhm.
and whether it's a factory or a software project or a data and analytic team, those principles like are just, they apply. And they apply in different ways, right? And different things, and they have different terms. But they're all kind of the same idea in my perspective.
Right, right. So when working with some data science teams, do you tend to see people having challenges where they're around finding the right data, right? Asking those right questions throughout the process, or even cleaning the data or understanding, well, how to get access to it and things like that. Do you have to deal with some of that as well when
I think
you're
that there's the problems are in every part of the data value chain. It's as an access, understanding. transformation, modeling, visualization, governance, and every company has its own unique challenges, right? And
That
so,
is a great point. That's a great
and
point.
so, and I don't think, what's that line from Anna Karenina? All great marriages are the same, but all bad marriages are bad in their own unique way.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like, I think it's sort of the same thing about data teams. Like, there's a lot of problems, right? And
Mhm,
so, I guess from my perspective, you can solve the access issue, then you get to the transformation, or
mhm,
you can solve those. But what's bigger, it's not so much about data silos, it's
mhm.
about people silos and process silos. And
Oh,
that I'm much more focused, and I think on that the factory than the workstation. And if you can get the
yeah,
factory humming, you can try new data sets quicker. You can
yeah,
make changes faster. And that actually enables you to solve all those other problems. So it's,
right.
don't focus on data silos, focus on people and tool silos,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, that's a great point. I've had so many, I've been on so many companies, so many organizations where the within the organization you have multiple product teams, right? You have multiple products they're building, and they're never on the same page, right? And you're realizing that I guess that would be more of product team silos, right? Versus it being actual people, but you would think that they would have the same process across the board, but one says, "Hey, I want my process this way," and the other one says, "I want my process this way,"
Yeah.
and there's no real reason why they shouldn't have the process similar, right? But they tend to
Yeah.
have,
Or just work on it. Yeah. I think like
yeah, yeah,
it's something, how your team delivers value to your customer is a thing that you own as a team. And is a thing that's the only real thing you own as a leader of a team. And that's you can't do the work for people. In fact, you shouldn't do the work for people.
yeah,
They get their job satisfaction because they're good data scientists or data engineers, right?
mhm,
But what you can do is try to build a system so that makes them productive, and
right,
allow them to see the impact of their work. And so, in a lot of data and analytic organizations, in small companies, it is 2 or 3 people, right? That they got a database guy and a Tableau person, right? In bigger companies, it gets very organizationally complicated. So they'll
hmm,
have a warehouse team or a lake team. They'll have multiple data science teams. They'll have people who are embedded into lines of business, using self-service tools. They'll have data governance teams, and if you sort of follow the value stream of data through a company, it just sort of like fans out. It's this many,
yeah,
many complicated, and everyone's working hard, and
yeah,
the challenge is like, number one is like things are always going to break.
yeah,
And when things go wrong, then the default is like, it's Saturday morning, get everybody on the phone, right? And
yeah,
everyone's like going, my piece, I'm doing the thing. And like,
yeah,
to me, it feels like just that's a really important thing. You should know that the things that you're delivering to your customer are good and right before you get them. So you should
right,
test
right.
them.
Then they
You should
start
test them
pointing
on.
fingers and stuff.
Yeah,
You're,
just say, oh yeah, this part broke. This Docker
yeah,
container didn't work. This server went down. You know, this guy checked in some code that made it bad. Or our data provider gave us, forgot that they exist and only gave us half the data they need. And like,
right, right.
you'd be surprised that up to some teams, 30% of the entire team work is
Mhm.
based on reacting to data problems and fixing, and they get paralyzed
Great
because
point.
they build something and they're so afraid to change it because it keeps breaking, and and so we kind of live in an age where like we're throwing our testing and quality assurance onto our customers,
Yeah, yeah,
because data is different and our customers are tell if it's wrong. And no, it's like, understand your data, understand what you're getting, and write automated tests and checks and monitors to make sure it's right. Um,
right.
because if you don't, like, my experience was, if I didn't do that, then I started to get yelled at by my customers, and
Yeah,
I was the guy they called, and I just, I don't like being yelled at. And like, I spent years trying to figure out how to run a good factory to produce insight with those two dimensions. Can it produce things that are perfect
hmm,
with all the problems of data, and can I change what's on that factory really quickly to react to whatever the customer wants. Or as I'm building something, I'm giving them something new every week, and they're reacting and learning. And if you do those two things, run a good factory and can change that factory really quickly, your team is much more productive, like on the factor of 10 times more productive. And
Oh,
they are much happier because they're getting more done. And
oh,
it's and so that's what's if you focus on these things, you actually end up getting more done, and your team's
mhm.
happier, and your life doesn't suck.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
No,
and so and your wife doesn't yell at you for complaining
yeah.
about your job night in and day out.
It all trickles, right? It all trickles.
It all trickles down. Yeah, all goes back to my wife.
Yeah,
I've been married for 30
yeah.
years. So
That's love right there. That's love right
exactly,
there.
it is. But yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that's the thing. Is that's it's true though. Is like a good mark of a good relationship is when they can say, "Can you just fix that? You can
yeah,
fix it." And
yeah.
and I think for me, I see the same problems in a lot of data teams, the same patterns over and over and over again. A lot of we're going to work really hard to build something, take months and months to do it, don't get feedback from the customer, get it in
Mhm.
production, it starts breaking left and right, everyone's unhappy, customer thinks your team's an idiot, and
Yeah.
then people start quitting, right? And
Yep.
it's just
Yep. That's
like
how it goes.
it's so frustrating, and it's so sad because people,
Mhm.
if they just would think about their work in a different way, apply some time to do automation and
Mhm.
testing, apply some of these data ops principles, manage their team in a slightly different way, they wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah,
They
and it's almost like you have to, you're trying to please the customer, but you know how the customer is, they're always demanding, right? They're like, I need this. This is my requirements now. I need it fast. It's almost like in order to do it right, you have to have the balance of, okay, I'm going to deliver quality to the customer, but it may take me delivering it at a slower pace initially to get to that point of delivering quality. So now the customer's happy because I deliver quality, but they may not be satisfied with the timing initially, right? When you're trying to get the foundation in place, you're trying to make sure everything is, automated. You're trying to, get all the kinks out. You're taking your time because if you don't take your time, then at the end of everything, you're going to be going back fixing all kinds of problems you could have fixed beforehand,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. You rush
Yeah,
to say, look at the cool stuff I've done, but you leave data quality. You need the ability to adapt and change. Leave governance. You leave all those things to the end, and then
yeah,
you're hurting. And so,
yeah.
to me, it's saying you can have a discussion with your customer. You can say, look, I've got this data.
Mhm.
I've looked at it. I put it in a schema. I've grouped it. I've run this quick model. I put the model in Tableau. What do you think? In a week.
Yeah.
The quality is poor. I haven't
Hmm.
really done a whole lot of checks, but I want to make sure I'm kind of on the right track.
Right.
And
Right.
you know what? There is no documentation, there is no data dictionary associated with it. And then they
Yeah.
go, no, that's totally wrong. Or they go, oh, yeah, that's right. And you say, okay, you know what next week I'm going to do? I'm going to have a whole bunch of automated tests in it to make
Hmm.
sure the data is right. And I'm going to run those every time it runs. I'm going to be able to then use those tests in a development process to make sure that if I do make a change, I can judge the impact and see if there's any regressions. I'm going
Right.
to, the week after that, I'm going to start building out my data dictionary. And
Mhm.
every week you can get, so instead of seeing these discrete phases as like, I get to build everything, and then all these other things at the end, they're all part of the discussion
Right.
because,
Right.
you know, it, but the high order bit here is like, are you actually delivering what the customer wants? And the only
Yeah.
way to do that is to let them touch it. You
No.
can't, I don't ever want to write a data requirements document again. It's just like,
Right.
just
Right.
shouldn't.
So
Because
let them
I'm
touch
going to get
it.
it wrong.
Right. Right. So so let them touch it, I guess, in spurts, right? Not just at the end, but kind of throughout the process.
Throughout the process, and because you're not only um, it's also about you need to understand what the data can tell,
Hmm.
You need to build something that takes what that story that what the data can tell in a form that's consumable by your customer,
Hmm.
and then back and forth. It's like you're constantly iterating between, does the data say it? Is it understandable by the customer? Do I
Hmm.
really understand what the customer wants? And you're trying to work
Right.
through all these things. And then you're trying to build something that you don't have to live with. Because the other aspect of the way people do is they spend a long time, they build something, and then it's wrong. They got to iterate it, and they're frustrated. And so I think that actually makes it hard for the team itself to gain
Mhm.
trust in the customer, because if you read a lot of reports, there's a lot of distrust of data. In that
Mhm.
thing about New Vantage report about the number of companies reported being data driven going down, partly the
Mhm.
reason is they don't trust the data. The way I look
Yeah.
at it is they don't trust the teams that are producing the data.
That makes more sense because at the end of the day, you're supposed to. I mean, that's what one of the benefits of data, right? You're able to support your decisions that you're already making.
Yeah.
You're able to backfill those decisions. The data actually has your back, right? They have your
Yeah.
they have your back throughout the process. So you're trusting the data. How can you actually say, man, I don't trust the data, right? Without going through the process of creating it, cleaning it, all that stuff. So how do you just say I don't trust the data? But I guess not trusting the teams, right? That actually makes more sense to me, to not trust the teams itself before saying I don't trust the data. Now, because you don't trust the teams, you don't trust the data. I get it.
Well, they say they don't trust the data, but what it really means is they're trying to be nice,
Yeah.
because they depend on the data teams for data. They're not going to say, "Oh, I don't trust the team at all." They just say, "I don't trust the data," or "This looks wrong."
Yeah.
But you're in a relationship, and
Yeah.
most business people, they're trying to make decisions, right? And they're more social beings than us nerds, right? And they're like, "Oh, do I trust this? Is this group solid? Is this not group solid? Can I trust them? Can I not trust them?" They're almost at
Yeah.
that level.
Yeah.
And like, I think working on the trust as a leader, getting because inevitably you're going to have hiccups.
Yeah.
Your suppliers are going to give you things. Your factory's going to break. Servers are going to go
Right.
down. People are going to take time off. Stuff's going to happen, right? And how you react to that with your customer is also really important. And a lot of organizations run from errors. They try to
Mhm.
hide them. When it happens, they shame and blame people on the team. It's someone's fault. And I
Mhm.
think part of the thing is you want to, and this is why I think Toyota beat American Motors, is they ran towards errors. Oh, there's a
Mhm.
problem. Error. Let's figure out why was that. Let's make it so it doesn't happen again. Let's look at the most common errors, find patterns, and automate them away and improve it. And I think
Right.
running towards your errors and running from them and admitting them to your customer, saying, "Yeah, we screwed up. We let some bad data through. Yep, it's our fault. You know what? We won't let it happen again." And we put a bunch of automated tests and checks so it never happens again. And you know what? I've never had a customer say bad at that. They're like, "Oh, okay, you're on top of it." I'm happy, and then what happens too is as you build those automated checks and tests and orchestration on top of it, that becomes a data set, and they start to look at it and go, "Wow, you ran 10,000 automated checks in the data before you gave it to me. Okay, you
Right.
guys are awesome. I don't have to worry about this anymore." And it gets to be quiet, and then they can start trusting the data more by trusting your team, and then you can actually fulfill what we're here to do as data and analytic people, is to use data to drive change in companies and behaviors.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. So I want to take a step back, right? You are the CEO and head chef, right? We want to talk about what that means, right? Head chef. But I think I think I kind of get the gist, right, of Data Kitchen. And um, what is Data Kitchen, right? What are you doing with Data Kitchen? How are you helping data analytics teams realize their full potential with data ops, right? That's an interesting concept. The marketing is great, and I'm sure the story is amazing. But the audience definitely wants to hear a lot about what you all are doing, some of the use cases with Data Kitchen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're a software company. So we got about 50 people in the company. We've been We're profitable. We've been growing kind of without outside investment for the last 8 years. And so our vision is that every data and analytic teams works according to the DataOps manifesto, which we wrote, the 18 points that they work in this fast cycle time, customer value focused,
Right.
trusted environment, metric driven. And we have software that enables that to happen. And the way think of our software as like the factory floor for data and analytics.
Mhm.
And you may have your, like Oracle's got a suite of tools, right, that do ETL. They have a database, they have a Viz tool, a data science tool. Like
Right.
those tools plug into our software. And what we
Ah,
do is we don't replace those, but we become the factory and that orchestrates those tools, that tests them, that deploys them, helps people build environments. We're the automation engine for data and analytic teams so they can run it in a more factory way and then collect data about what's happening in that factory so they then can improve. Like we'll give you a
right.
report. Over the last week, how many errors have you had in production? And
Oh, so
where were
even
those errors?
errors that are from the tool itself or errors.
Exactly.
Oh, nice, nice,
Yeah. So,
nice.
so like, your data may be perfect, but the VP goes, it's wrong. And well, was it the model went out of alignment? Did someone tweak the report wrong and put in a calculated field? Did somebody change the ETL code or ELT code?
Right.
Or, did someone did the data get weird? And
Hmm.
just like knowing that is like a really important thing for teams because and in fact, knowing it even before it's delivered to your customer is also
Hmm.
really important. And so that's like one of the philosophies is error rates in
Hmm.
your is if you can drive those down,
Yeah.
and so that's if you drive error rates, improve cycle time of your analytic team, you actually then the business benefit is they're much more productive and
Hmm.
therefore you're delivering much more insight to your customer and your life doesn't suck. And so, but to
Yeah.
do that, we've had to we wrote some software. Nobody 6 years ago, nobody understood what the hell we were talking about. It was just like, so went to our first conference. I'm wearing a chef's hat and a chef's jacket, right?
Nice.
Because I'm giving out wooden spoons with the DataKitchen logo on, and I'm trying to explain what we do. And people are like, "You're an ETL tool, right?" I was like, "No." "You're a database?" "No." "Do you do data science?" "No." And so we're trying to help improve, drive productivity of data and analytic teams by applying, agile and DevOps principles. And so we've been on this mission, and that's why we had to write 2 books, and why I go on podcasts is to educate that you should start thinking about the people and process as an important part of your, the what you do with data and analytics, the
Right.
models, the what that's really important, but the how
Mhm.
you do things is as important. And in my mind, it's more important because if you get that right, you get to change the what much more often and have more fun.
Oh man, great point. Great point. So I know we talked a little bit about, I guess we talked about data ops, right? And I know you just mentioned agile workflows, and you mentioned we've talked a little bit about DevOps as well. It's interesting to me. I know we had a discussion before. I might have read it somewhere where we discussed how things like DevOps, right, agile, and even lean lead to data ops as a better way to really creating value from the data. And so touch a little bit on that. Matter of fact, I think we should probably start with what we believe these definitions are, because some of my audience, right, they haven't really they're interested in it, right? They hear DevOps a lot, they hear data ops a lot. If you were to define data ops, what would be really your definition of data ops?
Well, I guess the way we've defined it is sort of a set of technical practices and cultural norms and architecture patterns that drive 4 outcomes in data and analytic teams. One is the increase in cycle time at which they
Mhm.
can deliver insight to their customers, the reduction in errors in their
Mhm.
analytic factories, the improvement of productivity in their teams, and the
Mhm.
measurement of the processes that they work. And
Okay.
so those 4 things: cycle time, error rates, collaboration, and measurement. And so from that, how that fits to DevOps is DevOps produces a software product, right?
Mhm.
And that has one great iteration cycle. And agile is the way you run your team to do that. And there's other terms in general, like some people run agile and Kanban and Scrum. There's all these terms
Right.
around how to like organize people. DevOps is the technology platform. It's the factory to do that. And so I think those are good, but they don't, because data, it has this other cycle in it of iterating on data and iterating on the application on data.
Mhm.
We've had to adapt some of those ideas to the data and analytics world. And so DevOps, I think, is kind of, I would say, that they're very related in concept, but they differ in practice because DevOps is more towards software projects and DataOps is more towards data and analytic teams. If you're a
Yeah.
good software engineer, you do DevOps. If you're a good data engineer or data scientist, you do DataOps.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
But they're all
see.
like they're all the same idea, and it's the like I don't care about the word, just do the
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely, right. But I'm glad you clearly defined that because I've seen a lot of people sort of, even though they're so close, right? They mix the two terms, and somebody like yourself or myself, we may say, hold up, do you mean data ops? Not DevOps, it's because, if we're trying to educate you on something, right, or we're trying to, make sure that you have this end goal. We want to, there's two different paths maybe that you're taking, right? Or two different skill sets that you have that we're dealing with. And so sometimes we have to define that. So I'm glad you're able to do that, and
Yeah, and I think also just if it's my life is I really thought as a software engineer, I
hmm
knew Agile and DevOps, and when I went to work in data and analytics, I thought, it's a subset of software, it's all easy,
hmm
I'm on vacation, and
yeah.
there's kind of that's there's sort of two suns, right? There's the application and the data, and it's different. And so I encourage people from a DevOps background to go into data ops because they got the principles, they just don't know the practices.
hmm
And there's a lot of people in data and analytics who've been there for a while who've been inspired to apply these agile, lean, and DevOps principles to their environment. And so I think it really comes to admitting where the problem is.
hmm
And um, I think from my standpoint, sort of, it's not a problem in an individual contributor sitting down at their keyboard and creating models, visualizations. Man, there's so many good tools to do that, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's not about like, and there's, supervised and supervised learning, structured,
Yeah.
unstructured
Right.
data. Man, there's a lot there. And like
Yeah.
the market's full of tools and books, and that's a great individual contributor skill. And like, I'm happy, like I can do some of that stuff. Maybe I'm not the best, but I've done all of it. And like, I guess I've come to the point where that just doesn't matter. The system that people work in matters more. And the way I touch the elephant is if you get that right,
Mhm.
people could iterate their way to delivering huge value. They don't have to be, I no longer look to hire the rocket science data scientist who can do everything, who can talk to the CEO and visualize data and model data and integrate data and like they're the rock stars. Like I don't want to hire those anymore because basically they create a bunch of technical debt and then they walk away. And
Yeah.
so if you can build a team that can focus on customer value, iterate quickly, automate things, and have a lot of trust, they can be very productive and very happy. And so the,
That's a
the
great
18
point.
points of the manifesto are all about how to do that.
That's a great point because, that goes back to when we discussed leading this data team, right? When you're leading that data team, you don't just have that rock star, right? You have each person can play their role, and that's it's better to hire five individuals that can cover maybe all the aspects, right, of the whole transformation process, right? I mean, or the ingest, the transformation, the analytics, and all that good stuff, the visualization part. If you have instead of one person that can do everything, right, you have multiple people that can do multiple different parts of that process, and that allows your team to be scalable, right? But if somebody was to leave the organization, right, which that happens all the time, and you're able to fill that one slot, now you don't have to fill somebody that can handle the world. You just fill somebody that can just get a little piece of the pie, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. And it's hard. It's hard when it's super tempting to hire heroes, right? And in some ways, all I'm talking about is imagine heroism and fear on a continuum, right? In some organizations, they target heroes. everyone's full stack, rock stars. They do everything. They're working late at night. One of them leaves. It's a big mess. More
Right.
heroism. Other organizations have attuned to fear.
Mm-hmm.
We take months and months and months to change anything, right? And like once it works, we don't want to touch it. They're attuned to like they don't want to be embarrassed by their customer, and so I think that there's a balance,
Yeah.
between fear and heroism. I think you should be a hero a couple of percent of the time.
Yeah.
I think you should have fear a couple of percent of the time, but most of the time you should make changes and know that they work and do them quickly. And so uh, I think that is something, the emotional state of a lot of data and analytic teams, where they're on one side or the other, that drives this high degree of unhappiness and high degree of project failure. And if we bucket it more towards the middle and find the happy medium, we're going to all be better off.
Right. Well, thank you, Chris, for being on the podcast. I like to, as the audience knows, I like to end with what I call a dope data nugget or gem, and I like to kind of summarize what I thought and gathered from this, right, from your expertise, right, your expertise, Chris. So when looking at the discussion that we've had, right, when going through this discussion, what I gathered from it is focus on the process and systems to deliver value, right? Um, I remember you mentioned that before. That's something that's key. That's definitely going to stick with me, and something that we just talked about probably a few seconds ago when dealing with a data team in general, right? Not just data science team. Really try to focus on not hiring that hero, right? Having a balance between hero and fear. When hiring a team, you never want somebody that can do everything in the world, right? You kind of want a team that's spread across handling different parts, right? There's probably so many benefits to that. So thank you again for being able to share that with us. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience?
No, I think from my perspective, things are going pretty well in the sense that the ideas I'm talking about are not just me now. It's a lot of people out there, and there's been a bunch of companies around data observability, which is a subcomponent, model ops. There's analysts writing about it. Other people have written books, and so it's nice to hear that intellectual property theft I did of stealing lean and agile and DevOps ideas and applying them to data. Other people have got the same thing, are doing it too. And so I think I think we're all kind of seeing the writing on the wall, is that this is really important. And and I think it's natural, right? How many more, we've done AI, we've done ML, we've done data science. There's not much more we can do. NLP, I mean, how many more acronyms can we apply before we get somewhere, right? Before we get to a point like it's really about the team and the process.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because we're coming up with so many acronyms, so many new things to dive into. But I always wonder, are we moving too fast? Right? Are we moving too fast because we have not been able to master the ones that are there right now? It's like you're jumping into NLP, you're jumping into neural networks, all these different things, which is great, right? You're diving into it. But have you handled the basics of data science and data driven decision making, things like that, educating them on that. I wonder what a college course is like now on like a 4-year course. I don't even know if somebody could get in a bachelor degree, right? Be able to really understand everything about data science by the time they in their career, because you're adding new things, every time. So it's mind blowing to me when it comes down to that.
Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more on the basics. Like, can you take some data, do a regression, and talk with a customer and get some insight, right? And do you
Something
really
so
need to
basic,
have
right?
cloud-based neural network,
Yeah.
NLP, blah blah blah? And I think a lot of that is honestly is people building kind of crystal castles of complexity.
Hmm.
And because it's fun and because we're good at it and because talking to people is kind of annoying. and so and like I think if you can just get out of the building and talk to some people and show them a little bit of something in a draft form and learn from it, you're just going to be so much better off. And it also just, your job satisfaction is going to go up because
Hmm.
you're having an effect on the world. Because those people who spend 4 or 5 months in a closet coding, yeah, they're building something really cool, but the back of their mind, they know it's not going to matter.
Yeah,
They know
yeah,
they're
yeah,
gonna and they're gonna
absolutely.
go on, and yeah, they've got some skills on their resume and they can talk the game, but like, are they real? Is it really like try to matter? I think that's what
Yeah,
you can matter,
yeah,
and you can make a difference. That's my. You don't have to sit in your room and build these complicated things to matter. You can actually just have effect on the people in your organization, the customers of your organization, and
yeah.
simply doing it simply is often better.
Man, great point, great point. I have so many stories that go back to the topic you just brought up, where you say, do something that matters, right? And I think that's why it took me so long to dive into data science, because I was trying to figure out, I've touched almost every aspect of IT, right? I mean, storage, networking. I was diving into all these different things, and working where I've worked at, in the government industry. You're doing networking and you're trying to figure out. I just did something that I think is great, right? Where I worked as a programmer at NASA at one point, right? I was a developer, a
Good.
Java developer, yeah,
Okay.
At the Goddard NASA.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay,
so,
yeah. I worked at Ames for like 3 years. Okay, nice.
oh man, man,
Yeah,
man, yeah. So I'm sitting there, and you want to make sure that everything that you're doing, or all this work you're putting in, I wanted somebody to tell me how I changed somebody's life at the end, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think I never got that. I never got that, right? I'm just sitting there in the dark, coding forever, right? I'm sitting there troubleshooting this storage problem with the government, right? And we're working in the federal government agencies, and at the end of
yeah,
the day, there are people out in the field that are that you're supporting, but everything I do, I just solve this problem so that this data could be here and it's secure, but nobody told me, what I did actually mattered, right? And
yeah.
so data science, I think I gravitate to that more because I feel like that's something that can change the world, right?
Mm,
I feel like being able to, cure, world hunger or something like that, or a disease that's out there, right? Really analyzing the historical data to help you, come up with some type of predictive analytics or decision making is changing the world, right? Maybe you could solve natural disasters, or pre-plan before a natural disaster happens, right? That changes
yeah,
the world. So that's why I gravitate to it more. I'm glad you brought that up. You know what I mean?
yeah. No,
I think.
I think that's really matters because, like, I mean, I have kids in their 20s, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, do something. Like, you're gonna work a long time. Like, I've been
Yeah.
working. Honestly, I've been working since 12, so I've been working like 45 years, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's a long time to like have jobs.
Yeah.
And like, it's much better to find things that are meaningful, that are having an impact on the world, and then nerd out on them. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that's like have something that has an impact on the world and then nerd out on it. You don't have to like change the world; just have some impact that's positive somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And like
agree.
I think that's a meaningful life, and I think that's much better than trying to like have the big house or the cool car or something. It's more meaningful to nerd out on something that you think is going to, at least in some small way, kind of push the world forward. And I
Right.
mean,
Right.
that's I think data is a great career for that. I mean, because I think
Yeah.
if we can get our own emotional, irrational, socially defined minds around something more objective, we can actually have a better life for all humanity in
Yeah.
general.
I agree. I agree, man. So, well, thank you again. And now it's time to have a little bit of fun. All right. It's time to get into a game I call Overrated, Underrated. I actually took this from a mentor of mine, not a direct mentor, but somebody I watch, a motivational speaker that I watch on YouTube a lot. His name is Gary
Okay.
Vee. And so, I watched Gary Vee, and he was doing this thing called Overrated, Underrated. I thought it'd be cool to implement this into my data podcast, right? Because a
Okay.
lot of times we find that we're so technical, we're always geeking out on data, we're always geeking out on the technology, right? It's so cool, right? But sometimes, the audience wants to know, are we more than just machines, right? Do we just focus on that all day? Are we always sitting there programming or thinking about the next? I mean, we probably do that, right? But at the same time, we also care about, football or other sports, right? We
Mhm.
actually we actually think about things outside of technology all the time. So, all right, the way we play the game, I list a series of topics, and you get to decide whether it's overrated, underrated, or right where it needs to be. You can
Okay.
actually explain
Do I
your
got to take
answer.
notes here? Do I got to write this down, or
Oh
I'll
no,
stay,
no, no.
I'll remember? Okay.
One at a time. So it probably lasts about 2 minutes, 2 minutes or so. All right. So the first one is the printer.
Overrated. I have a tablet.
Okay.
I don't print anything. I haven't printed anything in months or years.
Yeah, it amazes me when somebody says, "Hey," where somebody forces me to print. It blows my mind. And it's to the point where I've gone through. I would buy a printer, and for some reason, as technical as I can be, I always mess up with the printer. I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's not working.
I use the Apple Pencil and a pad. It's like, why? I'm never printing anything again.
Yeah, yeah. Why not print anything anymore?
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. Classical music.
I'm so, I wish I wish I could say it was just right. I think it's overrated. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
for me, I think it is too, a little bit. Like a little bit more upbeat. I know some people of the genius minds, like yourself, would typically listen to classical music. I think maybe for ease of, just relaxation and things like that. For me,
I mean, I'm sure people like it. I'm sure it's like much better music, and I'm not the right person to talk. But from my perspective, it was
yeah,
overrated.
me either. Yeah, I would say it's overrated. Myself. Okay, the role of the chef.
In a restaurant,
Yep.
uh, I think it's about right because I think leadership is really important. So I think you can and leadership is one of the reasons we call the company Data Kitchen is because there's a lot of parallels to what makes a good restaurant and having the different types of chef in the kitchen and getting the team organized. And I can I've had to learn to manage teams, and I can go into a restaurant and kind of in a few minutes kind of tell if the restaurant's well run, just the vibe of the
Oh,
laughter, the way that waitress
yeah,
comes up. It's like, oh, this is good. And
yeah,
like I
yeah,
appreciate that in like a middle-aged managerial sense, like well-run things. And so having a good chef who can create things or a good chef who runs a restaurant, I think it's important. So I don't know if it's
yeah.
underrated, but it's probably just right as being, out there being a good important thing.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely agree. I think it's right where it needs to be. I agree with you. I mean, when you think about the chef, right, that from a manager standpoint, they know how the menu works, right? They know how everything should be operated. I watch Chef Ramsay a lot, right? Him yell at people all the time on
Yeah.
TV. But it's something to be said about a person that's managing that knows the entire kitchen, knows how everything is supposed to be done, everything from how fast something is supposed to be delivered out to the customers, right?
Yeah.
So those type of things are very important. And you have the people who can cook one thing or two things really well, and they're over here doing their thing, and so it's really an important role out there, right?
Yeah.
As
Yeah. And I mean, and it's a lot like data and analytics, right? Chefs, they've got meals on their menu that they do week in and week out. And when people come, they want the same thing, same quality every time, want it to be perfect. But then good restaurants are always having new things on the menu, right?
yeah,
Good chefs are always trying new things. And you got to do that, both those things to get a good restaurant. You got to have consistently high quality meals. And then you've got to add new meals to your menu all the time. And those are both, innovation and operations you got to do both at the same time. That's exactly the same problem that data and analytic teams have.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, going to the movies.
I went with my son when he was home during the pandemic, and I didn't like it. It was overrated because there was a lot of commercials, and then a bunch of 12-year-olds were making noise. So I'm down. I'm ready now. I like movies though, in
Yeah,
general, but on the
I love
theater, I'm down.
movies. And I'm not gonna lie, man, being spoiled with the whole pandemic and streaming now and all that stuff, I mean, I can have the food I want, right, while I'm watching TV. You get a bigger TV, you turn the lights down, you can
Yeah,
get surround sound if you want, it can all work out, right? So I
yeah,
definitely agree, you know.
yeah.
All right, the Super Bowl.
Well, I'm from Massachusetts, so this year it is underrated because the Patriots weren't in it. So when the Patriots are in it, it's obviously super cool. but the Patriots aren't going to be in it for a while, I don't think. So
Yeah, yeah.
their time
Spoken
is
from
gone
a Patriots fan,
past.
I definitely thought that they were going to do better than what they did, you know, this year. But they made it to the playoffs, so that surprised me. And then after that, I thought they were going to do a little bit better,
Yeah,
Um,
I think their defense is a little bit old, and yeah, I mean they're good. They're good though. I mean, who do you root for?
I was a Cowboys fan. I'm not anybody's fan anymore. I'm more of a player fan. Yes, I have different
Oh, player
players.
fan. Yeah.
I played college football, so I played
Oh, you did.
cornerback.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I played cornerback, and my favorite player is actually one of my favorite players, Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
So hey, I was rooting for the Rams, and I like them. I wanted the 49ers to make it, um, because I like Debo Samuels. I
Yeah.
like their team. They were working pretty hard, so they didn't make it, but Jalen Ramsey is probably one of my favorite players right now. So
I watched the divisional round where all the games were decided in the last few minutes. Like those were like some of the
amazing,
best games I'd ever seen. Like
ever
it was
seen in
great.
playoff
Yeah.
history. In playoff
Like the
history, is
Kansas City Buffalo game was just like one of the best games in my life. Like it was just so
oh
good.
man. I know it was so intense, and it was great for me because I didn't have a specific team I was rooting for, So you're just seeing a good game being played. That was
Yeah.
amazing, So
Yeah. It was good. It was good football. Yeah.
all right, next one. I got two more, three more. Public speaking.
You know, I've been learning to do it. So like
Yeah,
I'm an introvert, so I work at it. I watch videos, read books. So I
yeah,
think it's important. And for me, what I've really focused on the last few years is trying to do it through stories and doing it through emotional connection. Because I
hmm
think people's memories, if you can tell things in stories rather than logic, if you can kind of hook into their emotions,
hmm
people remember what you're saying more. And that's where I'm trying to work on doing that because I'm like much more tempted to say this is how it works and then X and then Y and then
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. No,
like the so telling stories, public speaking is I run a company, so I've got to like talk to people for a living, so it's
yeah,
I'm always working at it.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I think I would say it's underrated. I mean, they say the biggest, fear besides death is speaking in public, right? That's probably one of the biggest fears, people have. And I can see why, right? Even no matter how much you prep and prepare and things like that, right? I don't think it's ever gone the way that I prepared or prepped, right? I could speak in front of 300 plus people. It doesn't matter, still,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
know what you're talking about, you just have that conversation. I like the story. It's like you said, that's really good, but I think people should do more trying to public speak, right? If they can, whether you're an introvert, especially if you're an introvert, right? Get you um, out there a little bit more, when running the company,
yeah.
things like that. So,
Yeah,
all
but
right.
like networking at a party though is bad. That's like
No,
go to a group of 50 people, say hi to 10 new people.
yeah, yeah, that is weird. All right. The hardcover book.
I'm a Kindle guy. I've been like, I do not, I got some books for Christmas, but like I'm such a Kindle,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, I can turn the font up because I got my over 45 bad eyes. So like it's,
Uh, yeah,
yeah, I'm a Kindle. I read a lot. I like so I'm
yeah.
not again. I read a lot of books. I just read them electronic form.
Yeah, yeah, I like the electronic books now, being able to access them from anywhere, all that good stuff. Don't have to lug something around, Um, and yeah, I just don't really see as much of the value in my eyes of having just taking up space in my house, with a bunch of hardcover
Yeah.
books when I get the same book then. And I do audio, right? Audio books now too, right? Audible books,
Yeah.
as well. So, those are great,
The
All right.
one thing that is negative about it though is like if you go to someone's house, like like you can go look on their wall and find books that they've written, and you can find things to talk about. You can
Yeah.
go like if you got the books on their wall, albums that they bought, it gives you like a thing. You can start looking through their albums and asking. You can't
Yeah.
like go open their Kindle and start looking.
All right.
What have you been reading lately?
Ask for
So
their code. Can I get your code real quick so I can have a conversation with you? So yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So I don't know. I'm wondering if like is there a business in like having your Kindle library as a picture on the wall, and then your Spotify playlists when people come over, so they can actually
oh,
like understand who you are.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's a good thing that somebody should come up with. I like that idea. All right, last one, right? Clam chowder.
It's awesome. I like, it is not underrated at all. But
Uh,
Boston clam chowder. So yeah, I live in Boston. Clam chowder. I don't know. It's like the good creamy New England clam chowder. It's just
yeah.
it's the best. Bad for you, but it's fantastic.
No, when I started going to Waltham, right, for work, the first time I went, I said, "Hey, look, what is known, right? In Massachusetts, right?" And he said, "Well, if you're going through Boston, definitely get the clam chowder," and it was amazing. I don't know how else to explain it, but the right word would just be amazing for me. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
definitely love
I like it. And then the other thing that's very Massachusetts is steamed clams or steamers.
it. So
Those
I
are
haven't
good.
tried that
Yeah,
yet.
and then lobster. In the mix of them, you get a lobster and steamers and clam chowder and
Yeah.
corn on the cob. It's called it's like they call what do they call it? I forget the name, but it's a very traditional meal here. A clam
Mhm.
bake. You have
Oh man,
those, and sometimes you do it on a beach, and it's that's one of my favorite meals.
oh man, I'm definitely gonna look that up. So audience, definitely, if you're
Yeah,
out there,
clam.
look it up
Yeah,
and make sure you do it. All right. Well, no, thanks again, Chris, for being on the podcast. Thank you, listeners, for listening to the Data is My Science podcast, the show that makes data your passion. I'm your host, Dapper Data. Where can they reach you at, Chris? If there's anything that if they
go to the
want to.
website datakitchen.io, and
Okay.
you'll find all the information. You can download our books for free, videos. We even have a 3-hour training and certification program you can take, just to learn about this concept of data ops and how it works.
Okay. Okay. And is there anything you have promoting right now? Any books? Any conferences? Any speaking
Actually,
engagements?
we're going to have a webinar on the 16th of next month, and we're
Okay.
going to talk. It's called "Love Your Errors." So it's
Mm,
about
I like
it's
that
kind of taking
title.
that idea and then kind of going into the details of what it means to love your errors, and how to fall forward when you have errors. So it's about
Great. Great.
observability and testing, monitoring, all those cool things.
Hey, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to try to check that out. So thanks again, Chris. Audience, as you know, you can always reach me at Mr. Dapper Data on any one of the social media platforms. I appreciate you all joining in for this episode. It's been amazing. Thanks again, Chris, and love you all. Peace.